Hi, everyone. Welcome to the two-year program info session. I'm Jeremy. I'm one of the founders of Make School. Really excited to be here today to answer your questions. A number of you have asked questions here in the sidebar. If you don't know how to ask a question formally, if you hover over me and click on Q&A in a little sidebar tab, there's a little icon. It'll pop up a window and you'll be able to see all the questions that I'm reading and answering, and of course contribute your own as well. I'm going to be selecting a number of questions from the sidebar and answering them, and going to get started with Zach's question: what kind of living situation can we expect? So as is typical for US higher education, we have student dormitories, and students live in the dorms, multiple to a room. We are unsure whether the students next year will be living together in a large house or in something that is more actually dormitory style, but regardless, depending on the room, there may be 2 to 4 students per room typically, and the rents are in the $1,000 per month range for a shared room, and more closer to $1,500 to $1,700 a month for a single room. The distance for the current students every day is about a 15-minute walk to our office where courses are held. I would say we're shooting to have it be 20 minutes or less for the housing for next year, and potentially even get closer. Taran asks, what sort of degree will a student receive once they complete Make School's 2-year course? And the answer is, currently Make School students receive no degree. There is no diploma granted at the end of the program, and that has not stopped employers from hiring our students. Google hired a student of ours just 2 weeks ago out of this 2-year program. Really, we do not grant degrees, and in 2016, Silicon Valley companies don't really seem to care. Arjun is asking about the admissions process, whether it'll be based on a video interview or the written applications will be taken into consideration. And the answer is a written application will be taken into consideration, and then the video interview, and then there's actually further process, some written challenges, and potentially more live conversations. So it's not just your written application and your video interview. Average age of 2-year students. So we don't really look for any past diploma, with the exception of a high school diploma being required. But there are students in the program who have undergraduate diplomas. I don't think anyone has come through with a master's, though we're not opposed to it, certainly. The age range is kind of in 2 buckets. We have students who are maybe 18 to 22, and then we have students who graduated university, worked for a few years, and are coming back to school. And like you actually do see at universities, students who are returning to school, sometimes also after military service. And so I'd say it's 18 to 22 is one bucket of students, and maybe like 26 to 29 is kind of the other bucket of student age that we see in the program. But that's not, we don't, our minimum age is just 18 with a high school diploma. Beyond that, we're open to any sort of life trajectory or story. Will the 2-year program focus on new technologies and frameworks like Node, Angular, React, and so on and so forth? We certainly do expose students to new technologies and frameworks. However, there is a big focus on what is popular in industry, because we find that it's important to prepare our students for the jobs that are out there. And unfortunately, there's a small disconnect, I'd say, between what young programmers are most excited about today and what companies are using and excited to hire for. So we try to, strike a balance between exposing students to new technologies, some of which don't necessarily end up being that useful in the job market, and exposing students to technologies that are like, let's say, Rails, that are more old school nowadays, but at the same time very, very popular in industry. And ultimately, we want to be teaching you things at a high enough level that you're not necessarily limited to working at a company that's using the particular technology that you want to be able to go on and get a job somewhere even if they're using technologies that are separate from what you learned at Make School. What are some of the top companies that Make School has paired graduating students with? So Matt, we don't actually directly pair students with a company. We have a number of partners that we invite to our recruiting events. Recruiters from companies that are not even partnered with us also come to those recruiting events, and students are responsible ultimately for applying for for jobs and obtaining them. Probably the most famous companies that have hired students out of our program would be Google, Snapchat, Pandora, and Edmodo. So those are the more famous ones. Some small, really awesome startups have made offers to our students or hired our students, but still aren't ones necessarily we would have heard of. But some of our students with top salaries, we're talking about like 120,000 US dollars, have been working at small companies that are still relatively unknown. So remember, the program is still somewhat new. So there's been a relatively small number of students going through it. We're really proud that in such early days we already have Google, Snapchat, Pandora, Edmodo, and so on. But I'm sure that list is going to grow, perhaps with your contribution. Another good question: how many students we're going to be accepting in the next semester? So we're accepting for the September entering year students starting in 2016, and we're shooting to admit approximately 100 students into that class. And of course, not everyone who's admitted comes. That's normal. So shooting to admit about 100 folks, and that segues into Francis's question. We've already had approximately 400 applications. You're also asking how challenging the coding challenges later in the application process. Can you prepare by reading Cracking the Coding interview? We try not to test for that kind of knowledge because Cracking the Coding interview is really about learning, like preparing for a very specific kind of test and sort of gaming the interview system. We're more looking at just actually trying to understand how much programming knowledge you have and what your understanding is of certain concepts. So it's not about like nailing questions like you would nail them in a job interview, because we'll prepare you for job interview specifically. It's about trying to understand whether you're just prepared and be able to handle the rigor of the program. So Cracking the Coding interview is helpful for jobs because companies do look for that, but the more useful thing would be to actually be building interesting projects. So work on interesting projects, ideally with friends, that you can show us as evidence of your knowledge and evidence of your accomplishments. Ultimately, if you try to optimize for getting into Make School, the only person who ends up getting cheated in that process, in that situation, is you, because if you can't keep up with the work and you studied for the test more than you actually studied in building your skills, ultimately that's going to hurt you. So I would say work on interesting projects, ship apps, ship websites, ship services, build things, launch things is really the best preparation for Make School. Is the placement rate already 100%? So we ran a pilot of Make School in 2014 with 11 students, and 100% of those students did receive employment. But it's a small sample size, 100% of the 11 students. And then in this cohort, I mean, we don't know yet because the semester has not ended, and a lot of students are preparing for our next demo night, where of course a lot of them are going to be getting job offers. So we're quite confident that we're gonna reach 100% or near it, but we won't know until May, when the semester ends for this year. But for last year, it was 100%. Overall process of admission from Geographic, we are looking at a written application where you will link, hopefully, to projects you have completed and evidence of your past work. We are then looking at a set of coding challenges as well as interviews with our admissions team. We will be looking for LinkedIn less, GitHub more. GitHub and personal websites to personal applicants we really do try and look at. So strong yes there, LinkedIn not as much. Apart from latest technologies, will there be classes on AI, embedded systems, machine learning? The answer is yes, but those are in the second year of the curriculum. So you have to understand that we can't do everything all at once, and the first year of the curriculum is focused on building and launching cool products using industry relevant software, mobile and iOS, web development using Rails, and then of course a selection of other technologies during that year, a small bit on hardware. And then in the second year, we have more deep hardware, embedded systems, AI, machine learning are all on the menu. So Matt asks, does the Make School prestige hold up when leaving California? If I were to apply to a company in the eastern part of the country, would they recognize the Make School name? So they certainly will recognize the Make School skill set. Companies at this day and age really can't afford to not hire folks that have the skills that they need. And we do have students in the last cohort who've gotten jobs on the East Coast. 2 of them are currently employed on the East Coast. And from this current cohort, we have students who have also received job offers from startups. Last year's cohort, 1 is in Boston, 1's in New York. This year, students have gotten offers only for companies in the Silicon Valley and California in general, and also New York City. I'd say probably a little bit less of a reach, because these companies can't physically attend our demo events, and so are less likely to have actually stepped foot inside of Make School. Sounds kind of silly, but a number of companies have see us while walking around San Francisco. They like walk past our building, and so we're a block away from Square, Uber, Twitter, and that certainly helps in a way. So I would say that New York City probably has a little bit less of an awareness of Make School, but again, we've had a number of students successfully get offers out there, and we actually have a good network of Y Combinator funded companies in New York. So if your particular goal was to get a job in New York City, there's a number of people off the top of my head that I could introduce you to. So we're really not concerned about that aspect, because the portfolio and the skills of our student really speak for themselves. Arjun, Make School housing is on average about $1,000 a month, and then you should budget a few $100s more, between $300 to $700, depending on your lifestyle, for food, transportation, and other discretionary expenses. Can you cover the internship matching during the 2-year program? So very good question, and hi again. It was nice seeing you a couple weeks ago. We don't do manual matching. Instead, we invite a number of companies to 2 demo events, 1 in the fall, one in the spring. There were over 100 companies in the building for 30 students at our last demo event. So a kind of an inverted career fair, 3-to-1 ratio, more companies than students. There were literally lines of recruiters from companies waiting to speak to our students, which was really cool. So we then also proactively make direct introductions to companies based on fit for the students. We have a student success team that is well networked with companies in the area, so there'll be kind of manual introductions, but it's not a match. We make the introduction, the student then goes through the interview process, and it's up to the company and the student to decide whether it's going to be a fit. This has an advantage, though, in that students are not limited to working for companies that are partnered with us, and we don't directly place them. They have full freedom. And so even a company like Google, that is not technically a partner of ours, has hired one of our students, and we tried to get them internal referrals through our friends at Google, but we didn't manually place them or match them at Google. So the biggest things that students end up doing that benefit their job search is preparing impressive projects in time for the fall and the spring demo nights, when we get so many companies in the building, and then the power of their portfolio and the project that they work on really speak for themselves. So that's our primary mode. We also occasionally have companies that come in our office to do interviews on the spot. So companies like Hipmunk and Dropbox have come to Make School and sent someone to interview students then and there. And I think we're seeing increasing interest for that model because it's very efficient for the companies. And so we expect to have a number of other companies coming in starting next cohort and actually interviewing on campus or in the building. Tyron says that he wants to go more into startups, and how does one get connected to YC and other accelerators as opposed to going for a job? Students don't believe us when we tell them this, but in fact, through us, your best path to get into an accelerator is to study up on your software engineering skills and launch great products. The students who feel like, oh, but actually I don't want to be a software engineer, I just want to go into startups, and so they end up not writing code. They try to, start managing other students or getting other people to build their ideas. That doesn't really work. It works when you build your personal skill set and ultimately end up having the ability to launch your products. At least in the context of Make School, that's how you're successful. So if you follow our curriculum and you launch a great product in the fall, a great product in the spring, that can easily segue into a Y Combinator application. We have a number of students applying to YC Fellowship or YC Core during this semester. I know because their applications just hit my inbox and I'm reviewing them right now. And we personally know a number of YC partners who have come in to Make School to meet our students. So Kevin Hale, who runs the YC Fellowship, was one of the attendees of our demo night in the fall, came and met a bunch of students, had a list of people that he wanted to connect with as follow-ups as potentials for the fellowship. So Make School provides a unique opportunity in that way, and that we can get YC partners in the building. We also can get students to go and visit YC and meet the partners there as well. So you do get that personal touch and personal connection where not only, of course, everyone can apply online, but you can actually go and meet them and talk to them about your application in person. We've had even students be able to go grab coffee as a follow-up from meeting YC partners in person at Make School events. Francis asks, if you admitted, can you hold your spot until the next year? Certainly, yes. When will the next cohort be picked? Says Matt, it's actually on a rolling basis. So we are already preparing to make a first round of decisions as early as next week for students who have already submitted their video interviews and engaged with us. So there's no due date. We will start admitting people potentially end of next week if people get their applications finished enough. And then we even have people applying in July and August. That sounds crazy and abnormal, but the fact of the matter is that a huge number of students who end up being interested in Make School are currently enrolled at universities, will come to the Silicon Valley or New York for internships this summer. We'll talk to their peers, we'll talk to companies, and we'll discover that actually they don't want to go back to school. And so if you're like a Columbia freshman, you're not applying to Make School right now because you think you're going back to Columbia next year. But people like you, and maybe even you, will decide in July, oh shoot, actually I don't want to go back, I want to do Make School instead. And that's why we have kind of this two-phase process, but it really ends up being a rolling process where we make some decisions in March, and then we will make some other decisions as late as July and August. When we recommend you finish the video interview by, it's on a rolling basis, and in particular if you want financial assistance, financial aid for your living expenses sooner rather than later. If you don't want financial assistance, we will let you know when Make School is filling up, but typically the sooner the better. This year we have a big surge in application volume as compared to last year, and so it'd be to your benefit to doing it, soonish. So if you have other colleges to decide for, obviously like ASAP, but by early April, if you're thinking about applying, is ideal. Are there extracurricular activities, for example, company visits? Oh yeah, we do lots of company visits. Students have visited headquarters of Lyft, headquarters of LinkedIn, and a number of other companies. Most recently, I think THX gave a visit to our students. Number of sort of social activities in the local area, meetups that we host even at our offices. Almost every night there are events at Make School itself. Engineers from other companies coming to present, other sorts of networking and sort of festive events. We have game nights. We have lots of guest speakers coming to Make School, lots of guest speakers. So just a huge number of opportunities. Would you say that Make School's curriculum is comparable to MIT or CMU's CS curriculums? I'm not familiar with CMU's as much. I am familiar with MIT's. Very different from MIT's. I was at MIT. MIT forces all students who want to major in computer science to go through a two-course sequence called 601 and 602, which involve a heavy electrical engineering component. And so you'll spend a lot of your time in MIT computer science, and especially in the beginning, even if you want to be a pure CS major, you're going to spend a lot of time doing circuits, calculating equivalent resistances, figuring out what happens when there's an op amp, what that even is, how does a diode impact your circuit, all things that we do not include in our CS curriculum. We just attract a type of student who is not necessarily interested in solving for equivalent resistances in a circuit in their computer science class. In fact, one of the reasons that I ended up switching out of CS at MIT was because I was not interested in that at all. I'd imagine that Carnegie Mellon's has a more standard sequence, which is more of a standard introductory CS course. And there I'd say that some of the content in the very beginning of introductory CS or your first algorithms and data structure classes may be actually quite in common with some of the content we have at Make School. But beyond that, it highly diverges, highly diverges. We really go way more into project-based, way more into using current technologies with an updated curriculum and going through iOS, web, and then some hardware, AI, machine learning, and so on and so forth. We don't follow a more traditional university sequence. But again, the very introductory data structures algorithms courses have some content in common with what we do at Make School. Dilara asks, do many of your students already work? And the answer is a number of them do, but we've found that it's been difficult for students to manage the workload of Make School. We're a university alternative packed into 2 years. It's a lot of work, and students who've been doing outside work to sustain themselves. So, anyway, I can think of one example who's been super successful. One of our best students is working a lot on the side, but on average, it's been very difficult for students to juggle. And so a number of students did quit their jobs to come to Make School, and that is not at all uncommon. Francis, if you were to attend Make School, you'd be learning Monday through Sunday, right? Yes, you would. I mean, and at least at Make School proper, Monday through Friday. And then the number of opportunities to learn on the weekends, hackathons, like local event. I mean, your projects you'll be working on, there's more things to learn in every hour than there are, minutes in that hour to learn them in. So you'll be well satisfied on that front. Taran asked a really good question. Is having an iPhone and a Mac requirement for the course? Having a Mac is, having an iPhone is not. What about maths for computer science? Is that not important for a CS major? Yes, it is. We do actually cover some of the mathematics that are important to the foundations of computer science in the 2-year program. We do a little bit in the first year, but with a heavier focus on arguably what's also maths for CS, but through a data structures algorithms lens. And then we double down in the second year a little bit more on some of the mathematics behind computer science. So you're absolutely right. And this is not something that we do, you might be thinking like, but wait, traditional college teaches math for computer science. Why you're not a traditional college? Why are you doing that? And ultimately, we defer mostly to what companies tell us to think is important. And we found that companies point to some of the mathematical courses in college as being, at least the foundational early ones, as being actually quite helpful. And so because companies are looking for it, because companies tell us that it's really useful, we include it in our curriculum as well. Where can I get a more in-depth look at curriculum in general, says Francis. We're revamping our curriculum outline right now, actually. So they'll be posted and emailed out a link where you can see sort of a semester by semester curriculum outline. We actually have a new designer starting at Make School in 2 weeks who is wonderful, and she loves teaching, and she's going to be helping us also redo our design curriculum. So sit tight, because there's going to be a lot more on the sort of UI UX design front to talk about, and a more detailed curriculum that we're reworking the sort of timeline and schedule for in the next couple of weeks. So if you want to see, let me see if this link still works. Is it /education or /curriculum? No, it's /curriculum. So if you go to make.sc/curriculum, you can see a rough outline of the curriculum we used last year. So make.sc/curriculum will redirect you to a rough outline of last year's curriculum, but a new one is on its way. If admitted, will you receive need-based financial assistance? So remember, the program has no tuition up front. We instead take a percentage of salary, but then you do have to cover your own rent. And for some students, we do provide assistance for rent. That is on a need basis, but also first come, first serve, given our budget. So we can't guarantee it, but if you are proactive with your application and you get, you get in soonish, then we certainly can talk about it sooner rather than later. Mark asks, when will we know whether you're accepted or not? Students have started submitting their video interviews this week, and we hope to be able to start making decisions before early April is when we want to be sending out the first ones at the very, very latest. It of course depends on how fast students progress through the process, but that's our target date for the first decisions. Taran asks, how many teachers are present at Make School? Will there be a single class for everyone or divided in groups? We have a very high ratio, depending on the section of the course, between 1 to 5 to 1 to 10. And that's teacher to student. And there is kind of a single track that students do in common, but there are optional electives that students can do together. So occasionally there's moments where everyone's in the same room working on the same stuff, and some moments where students break off to go and take a graphics class that other students aren't doing, or do a writing class that other students aren't doing, things like that. So there are some options. In terms of the laptop, is a MacBook Air or MacBook Pro possible? We have students doing a MacBook Air. What's most important is that you have 8 gigs of RAM, because the 4 gigs of RAM will significantly extend your compile times. There is no software that we require that is expensive. We use primarily Xcode for mobile development, which is free on the App Store, entirely free for all Mac users. And then we use a number of other open source and free tools for the other phases of the curriculum. Sometimes we recommend that you buy a certain plugin or things like that, but then we're talking about, 20 bucks maybe here and there. So you can estimate your total software cost beyond your computer, $0 to maybe $100 a semester, and more often $0. Ryan, besides a Mac that has 8 gigs of RAM, not much other software or hardware that you'd want to bring. And then during the course of Make School, might reach certain situations where we recommend a certain software suite, doing a little 3-hour install-a-thon. We try to get everyone configured with the same editor, plugins, so on and so forth, but nothing that we recommend you bring up front. Let's see. What if you've already learned data structures and algorithms in college? Then you would probably opt out of the data structures and algorithms course lectures, and instead you would take advantage of the mock interviews and sort of reapply that data structures and algorithms knowledge towards an interesting project or towards preparing for job interviews. So we're really not, we're not degree granting. It gives us more flexibility in being able to let students do things that make more sense for them. So there's no such thing as like, oh, data structures and algorithms is a prereq that you must take. It's more like, we talk to you, and if indeed you're at the level where it doesn't make sense for you to go through this again, we'll find an alternate path for you, and you won't be alone. I mean, we get a lot of students. More students in this last class transferred out of university than we did get from out of high school, by a small margin. So we got some students out of high school, but we got more students out of university. So Charlie, don't worry. There's a lot of other students who will have also done a year or two of CS at their schools and already done data structures and algorithms. Mark, if students are not accepted, then they have an opportunity to reapply for the next year. So students enter every September. Is using a powerful Windows or Linux PC with a virtual machine okay? Has to be really powerful. I would test downloading Xcode and actually, compiling stuff. We've had pretty bad experiences with students on virtual machines before, because just the compile times were too slow, and even there was sometimes a delay with typing. So what are some of the cool examples of projects that have come out of Make School? Colleen, that's a really good question. We totally should have a project showcase page. Do we have a project showcase page? No. Okay. Well, I'm going to ask that we make one, or at least send something out to everyone with a little like showcase. We have 2 students from South Africa that just made the news back in South Africa for the app that they made. Is it called TransitWise? Yeah. If you want to see something right now, you can go to the App Store and search for TransitWise. And it only works in South Africa, but it's a really, really cool app. I'll give you an idea. What?
The founding class page is links to projects.
What is the link for that?
Thanks.com/founding class, I believe.
Yeah. So we have also a page that describes all the students in the founding class, makeschool.com/founding class. You should be able to find more information on what every student has done there. Can we describe the school social scene? Highly integrated with the social scene of young professionals in the city. So because Make School has a relatively small number of students, our students end up socializing amongst themselves, but also a lot in meetups and other sort of events that are through the tech scene in the area. You know, happy hour at Twitter's headquarters, or engineering lecture at, you know, the Facebook San Francisco office, or stuff like that is quite common for students when socializing. And then there's a lot of opportunities for outdoor stuff. So, you know, meeting up with people at the park, things like that. There's just an abundance of events being organized by the local community of young students and recent graduates. Everything from Make School students to students at Minerva right next door, to students who are in the Teal Fellowship, to students who are just dropouts in general, to students who recently got jobs and are in their early 20s in the area. And all these folks are generally pretty connected on a number of social groups, Facebook groups, so on and so forth, and meet up and organize events on a regular basis. Mother asks, characteristics that previous great Make School students possess. The biggest common one I would say is work ethic. Work ethic as applied to software engineering. You know, it takes a lot to be able to go from the satisfaction of building something really hacked together at a hackathon, but getting a lot of recognition for doing so, to spending 8 weeks on one app and doing it the right way. And a lot of students have trouble making that transition from I'm a rock star making cool apps every weekend at hackathons to, oh my gosh, I need to work really hard to become a good software engineer. And some students can put in that hard work, and some students just get stuck in this cycle of going for the easy wins, of trying to make yet another simple project, of shifting gears all the time and not going deep in one thing at one time, because it's so hard to have the discipline to do that when you could just switch to some new framework, new technology, new cool hackathon project. The students that become great engineers, and the students that also just build great projects, so become really, really good at product design and product thinking, are the students that have the discipline to work hard every day, like 8 hours a day, on furthering that goal, as opposed to trying to context shift into sort of easier short-term wins that are not as educationally rigorous in the long term. Francis, how does tuition work? So you pay the earnings you make in an internship between the first and second year of study, and then you pay 25% of your salary for 2 years after graduation, but that's only when you have a job. So if you take time off, if you don't have a job for whatever reason, you're not paying during that time. Is there a scheduling process for classes, or does a cohort move through the curriculum together? Good question. There is no credits. There's no such concept. There's a core that students must do, which culminates in a project that they must demo at the demo night, and then a bunch of options that are available to students. So most of the cohort, with very few exceptions, is doing at least one thing altogether, culminating towards a project in a certain technology, plus numbers of students are doing little side things. I hope that makes sense. Is there an age criteria? No. 18 with a bachelor's degree, 18 with a high school degree on the low end, and that's it. So no upper age limit. William says, Make School is primarily focused on iOS apps. Will it help you with Android or cross-platform development as well? This is the 2-year program info session. in 2 years, we cover a lot more than just iOS apps. iOS application development happens to be one of the phases in our 2-year program, which covers way more than just iOS. Now, it does turn out that Android is not explicitly covered. However, a number of students, even from our summer program, which is not as in-depth as our 2-year program in iOS, a number of students from our summer program have gone on and gotten jobs as Android developers. Because we're teaching you iOS at a level where switching to Android is actually not that difficult. So it's not going to be explicitly covered, but if you want to do it, historically, we have a track record of getting students to a place where they've been able to do it. And if you have a critical mass of students in the program who want to do it with you, we would totally approve a kind of self-study module we could officially sanction and have even an instructor help you with if there were, let's say, 4 or 5 students interested in doing Android together. Dilara is asking about the workings of getting accepted to the 2-year program after finishing the summer academy. So during the summer academy, instructors will be talking to students who are interested in the 2-year program, and there's kind of nothing really insightful. We look at your progress in your projects. We look at how you work with our instructors, how you work with others, how disciplined you are, how much progress you're making in the curriculum, and so on and so forth. And we make a decision based on that. And we try to make the decision about 4 to 5 weeks into the 8-week summer program. Is there a way to get to contact current or past students to get their take on Make School? Absolutely, Matt. If you contact hello@makeschool.com with a little bit more information about yourself, just to indicate to us that you're indeed a serious applicant, hopefully you've already applied in the system, be more than happy to introduce you to a current or past student to talk about their experience in Make School. Mark is asking whether we host activities for other companies. The answer is yes, actually. We sublease our space to other companies, and we also host events for external companies in our office. So that does indeed happen. In fact, like the team at Facebook building some of their open source frameworks like React held a meetup at our office. So really we do try and host events for other companies at our office. Let's see, what are other common questions? What is the make of students, what is the Make School student demographic? We do not consider applicants' gender and ethnic racial background when making admission decisions. Our process right now doesn't have necessarily a way for accounting for that. Instead, we focus really, really heavily through a number of partnerships we're forming with nonprofit organizations around the country, focus really, really heavily on increasing the number of applicants from certain demographics. So you'll see us investing heavily in sourcing more students from certain types of backgrounds, but once they've applied, it does not affect their chances of getting through and actually being admitted. The current class is about 20% minorities underrepresented in tech, and we had actually a student leave the program partway through, but 10% women was where the program started, and now it's 5%. So not enviable statistics, and something that we're investing really, really heavily in changing for this coming year. Like I said, through a number of partnerships and making sure we get more applications from a wider variety of backgrounds. So very proud of our statistics around ethnic and racial backgrounds, and very, very conscious of the fact we have a lot of room to grow in terms of gender backgrounds. Taran asks the timing of classes in a normal day. Students are typically in from 10 to 5. At 10, we have morning stand-ups with the student's lead instructor, talk about progress the previous day, and so on and so forth. But then we go on to individual meetings with instructors, and then we spend a lot of time coding and attending our relative classes. Most classes are not lecture-based, they're more discussion-based. So a class time is more time to discuss a certain topic or the work from the previous day. Let's see. There's more of these to get to than we have time. Will you learn social networking and making connections? Yes, in fact, if you were to meet our students, you would find that that very few of them maybe appear as like stereotypically nerdy, I'd say. A lot of our students, we have a wide variety, but a lot of our students are very social, and software engineering is actually a very social discipline because you often have to work on teams. There's very, very few apps that that were just built by one person, and most software is written by teams of people, meaning learning how to work with those is important. So we facilitate that through communications courses, public speaking, writing, having you work on group projects whether you like it or not, and of course trying to facilitate a lot of opportunities for you to meet folks outside of Make School. Francis, do we track the progress of alumni? Yes, we have alumni groups. We stay in touch with our alumni. We're very aware of where the students in the 2-year program end up, and are generally aware of where students in the summer academy end up because they get back in touch with us and let us know. We throw alumni reunions in the summers. We get them to come by. So a number of standard stuff to keep in touch with alumni. And we try to introduce alums who are at the same companies or at the same universities when we can. Which stack is the most covered? Mean stack is not the most covered. I would say Rails and iOS are the most specifically covered stacks. Students do dabble in Mean. We did offer a course in Mean stack. We had a few students do a React project, and I think 2 go into Ionic and Electron. So both are possible. But the standard core goes through iOS and Rails. Francis, the product university and the 2-year program are the same thing. 2 names for the same thing. A lot of questions about international students. I'm going to defer those to a further info session because there's a lot of international specific questions. Probably do a dedicated international info session. Let's see. International. Dilara, you'd have to contact us directly about bringing your spouse to housing. I don't know if that's possible. It's probably room dependent. Let's see. I'm going to try to go through. What didn't I cover? Mark, I already described the average day of a Make School student. Soft skills development, we covered. International questions we'll do soon. Zach, good question. $1,000 a month is per bed. So it's cost per student for a shared room. You have to remember that in San Francisco, the average studio apartment, so studio meaning like a 1-person apartment, if you were trying to get your own, the average is $3,000 a month or more. So to be able to get a room that is shared and big enough for 2 people at $1,000 a month is actually a great deal for San Francisco, and actually not so much more expensive and even cheaper than some other universities in California. International students. Matt, what percentage of graduating students go on to be successful in industry? Again, this program is very new. Just have a test cohort of 11 students to talk about. All of them got jobs, and the most famous employers were Pandora, Edmodo, Snapchat. In this class, we have someone who's already gotten a job at Google and a number of other companies, and we'll have full stats in May for this class. A lot of international specific questions, which reminds me that I need to do that dedicated info session. I'm gonna call it a wrap here. It's 8 o'clock. We need to do many more of these, I'm sure. There's a lot of you tuned in, a lot more questions. We'll do a dedicated session for international students. I'd like to kind of summarize some of the common questions. Make School's 2-year program is 8 months of study, 6 months of internship, 8 months of study. The housing that Make School provides is available to all students if they want it, and it'll be at a $1,000 a month price point for a shared room, more for a single room. Students spend about from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day at Make School, going through a common core where students are working on building a project for the next demo night, plus a number of side courses that they're enrolled in, including courses like data structures and algorithms, but also alternative tech stacks that are not covered in the core curriculum, courses like a graphics course, and then lots of non-technical courses, design, UI, UX, writing, communication, public speaking, so on and so forth. We host a number of events ourselves and for other companies inside in our office space and our students are constantly attending events organized by local tech companies and socializing with a greater community of alternative education students. So that's Make School students, Minerva students, that's Teal Fellows, recent grads who are in industry and things like that. The program is really targeted towards students who know that they want to be software engineers or founders, but understand that the path to do so involves writing code every day and building great products every day. If you are, more of the business type person and you've done a little bit of coding, you have to be committed to writing code every day. And a lot of times it's tempting to deviate and say, you know what, well, I really want to, become a product manager. I shouldn't be writing code every day. But it turns out that for even jobs like becoming a PM, the best way to get that job is to write code every day, because most PMs actually come from a technical background. So we really, really want to emphasize that this program is a good fit for those who are dedicated to writing code every single day, and we'll have the discipline to do so. And if you meet our students, you'll be incredibly pleasantly surprised to discover that they are incredibly varied in their interests. They're incredibly social. They're really, really wonderful people, but they are really wonderful, social, smart, diversely interested people who all write code every day. And that cannot be overemphasized. With that said, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure answering all of your questions. As a reminder, for those of you who are kind of halfway through your applications, financial assistance is on a limited basis, but on a need basis. So you have an interest, if you're applying for financial aid for housing expenses and whatnot, to get your application in as soon as possible. And we are shooting for having admission decisions out in the next few weeks, early April at the latest, depending on how fast students progress through our process. If you have any more questions that are immediate, hello@makeschool.com. There's a dedicated person who's available to answer your questions and even hop on the phone if you have any you want to ask live. And we'll be doing many more of these info sessions in the very, very near future. Thank you all so much, and look forward to chatting with you all again soon.